Hello, it's a very lovely good evening once again and great welcome. So this is going to be your third day of the live sessions, but at the same time, this is second session of business combination. Great welcome to each one of you. And in the last session, which I took, we talked about what exactly the business combination is, and we also saw the principle was this particular standard lays down with respect to what we call business combinations. करेक्ट. तो बेटा लास्ट सेशन में जब मैंने क्लास ली थी तो मैंने आपको बताया था कि बिजनेस कॉम्बिनेशन बेसिकली ये वही शीट्स हैं लास्ट सेशन की जो हमने उस वक्त करी थी. तो मैंने बताया था कि बेसिकली बिजनेस कॉम्बिनेशन जो है इंड AS 103 वो स्ट्रेस करता है या गाइडलाइंस जो प्रोवाइड करता है वो एक्वायरर की बुक्स के लिए करता है. जब एक एंटिटी किसी दूसरी एंटिटी को टेक ओवर करेगी, करेक्ट, या किसी दूसरी एंटिटी का कंट्रोल हासिल करेगी, तो ऐसे केस में जो अकाउंटिंग एस्पेक्ट्स होते हैं तो उनके प्रिंसिपल्स क्या हैं. जैसे कि लास्ट सेशन में हमने देखा था कि हम सबसे पहले तो जिस एंटिटी को हमने टेक ओवर करा है या जिसका कंट्रोल हमने हासिल करा है उनके सारे एसेट्स और लायबिलिटीज को फेयर वैल्यू पे लेंगे, लेकिन हमने उसके कुछ एक्सेप्शंस भी लास्ट सेशन में देखे, करेक्ट. उसके बाद स्टैंडर्ड में just hold on for a while. I just received a message that voice is not coming. Please give me the mic. Sometime it happens actually. Please give me the mic. Thank you. I hope now the voice is coming. Honestly speaking, sometimes it happens that when you go for the live stream, so many things need to be done simultaneously. I hope now the voice is clear. Please let me know. Are you able to hear me? Are you able to hear me now? Okay, thank you very much. So last time we started off with business combination. We saw what exactly the principles of the business combination. When an entity acquires the control of the other entity, correct? We need to know the principles with respect to identification of all the assets and the liabilities. Last session में हमने ये भी देखा था. I will come to English in a short while. Don't worry about that. तो लास्ट सेशन में हमने ये भी देखा था जब एक एंटिटी किसी दूसरी एंटिटी को टेक ओवर करती है तो कुछ अकाउंटिंग एस्पेक्ट्स होते हैं. अकाउंटिंग एस्पेक्ट्स के अंदर सबसे पहले तो हमें यह देखना पड़ता है कि कौन कौन से एसेट्स हैं उनको हम रिकग्नाइज करेंगे और किस वैल्यू पे मेजर करेंगे. जो लायबिलिटी हमने टेक ओवर करी है उनको हम किस वैल्यू पे मेजर करेंगे, कैसे रिकग्नाइज करेंगे, और इनमें एक्सेप्शन इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. लास्ट टाइम हमने एक्सेप्शन की डिस्कशन करी थी. जब हमने स्टेप्स देखे थे तो मैंने तुम्हें यह बताया था आइडेंटिफिकेशन ऑफ एसेट्स नंबर 1. देन वी ऑल्सो टॉक्ड अबाउट आइडेंटिफिकेशन ऑफ लायबिलिटी. Then you remember I also wrote goodwill and NCI. इसका मतलब ये है कि जब मैं किसी एंटिटी को टेक ओवर करूंगा तो quite naturally because I am taking over some assets, I am taking over some liabilities, and because I am taking over some entity, quite obviously I am paying some amount. तो ये नेचुरल है कि ऐसी सिचुएशन में कुछ गुडविल या कुछ गेन ऑन बार्गेन परचेज अराइज होगा. जस्ट पे अटेंशन है. Suppose these are the rough sheets. Suppose I go to market and I buy a shirt. I go to market and buy a shirt for rupees 500. Correct? That means the amount paid by me is rupees 500. I got one shirt. Let us say value of this particular shirt is just rupees 300. I paid rupees 500 to acquire this shirt. That means what I am getting worth rupees 300, but what I am paying that is equal to 500. That means directly or indirectly I am losing out rupees 200. Correct? Because I am paying 200 extra. It means the party which pays the extra amount, from the perspective of that party, that extra payment is known as goodwill. Because here we have taken, let us say now, Now I will come to the point. Let us say we acquired net asset, that is assets minus liability of the entity worth rupees 300. Correct? And let us say we made a payment of 500. This is known as purchase consideration. Quite obviously, unless and until I will make some investment in the other entity, I cannot take the control of that particular entity. Correct? So, let us say your investment is rupees 500 crores of worth. And you got in lieu of that net assets worth rupees 300 only. That means you are the paying party and you paid extra amount rupees 200. So that is goodwill from the perspective of the party which is paying the extra amount. Now take another situation. Suppose entity A takes over entity B. When I say entity A takes over entity B, it means entity A has made some investment, let us say 70% worth of investment in the share capital of A Limited. And 70% investment is, let us say, equal to 600 crores. Obviously, we have got the control now. Because we have got the control over entity B, quite obviously now assets and liabilities of entity B belongs to us directly or indirectly, because we have got the control over those what we call assets and liabilities. Now, we have paid 600 crores. And let us say we got net asset, that is assets minus liability, worth rupees 800. This time we are getting more than what we are paying. This time we are paying only 600, but at the same time we are getting 800 worth of amount. Is it clear to you? So in this case, under AS 14 we used to call it as capital reserve. But under this particular Ind AS, we will call it gain on bargain purchase. Gain on bargain purchase. It is known as gain on bargain purchase. Honestly speaking, gain on bargain purchase is the new terminology for capital reserve. Goodwill is always known as capital loss for the party. The party means the party which is making the payment or which is making the investment. And of course, in rare situation, if benefits in the form of net assets are more in comparison to the payment which we have made, then we call it what we call, we used to call it capital reserve, but nowadays, as per Ind AS 103, the terminology is that we are going to call it gain on bargain purchase. But to be very honest with you, in practical life, gain on bargain purchase can never ever arise. Gain on bargain purchase can never ever arise. Gain on bargain purchase can never ever arise. ऐसा क्यों? गेन और बार्गेन परचेज बनने का प्रैक्टिकल लाइफ में कभी भी नहीं हो सकता है. सपोज आपका एक बिजनेस है, करेक्ट? आपका एक बिजनेस है और उसकी नेट एसेट्स माइनस लायबिलिटी इज इक्वल टू 1000 करोड़ है. That means the value of your business is worth rupees 1000 crore. Is it clear to you? Now let us say I am interested in acquiring your business. Now just tell me very honestly, would you be willing to accept anything less than 1000? Because your business is worth rupees 1000 crores. So quite obviously, no sane person, कोई भी बुद्धिमान व्यक्ति जो सोच समझ के काम करने वाला हो, no sane person in the world will accept an amount which is less than the value of the business. It is as simple as that. So that is why I said that in practical life, gain on bargain purchase can never ever arise. 99.99% we will see that there is only goodwill. Because generally the entity which is being acquired is not going to accept anything which is less than the value of their net assets. Suppose if the value of your net assets is 1000, you will never ever accept an amount which is below what we call 1000. Obviously, you are going to happily accept anything which is more than 1000. So generally the party which pays for the net assets will be on the losing side. That party will have to pay something extra. However, in rare situations, gain on bargain purchase could arise. Because it could arise, that is why Standard has given this concept. Otherwise, Standard would have been very silent about it. What is that rare situation when such a situation could arise? For example, recently what happened last to last year, I think, in Britain, England, UK, United Kingdom, A voice was raised against entities that did not belong to what we call UK but operating in UK. Are you getting my point? On a lot of protest was made against the what we call that those entities which belong to other nations. Correct? I'm talking about UK. So there are many entities of other countries which are operating in UK. So some time back, what I said, a voice was raised, a protest was made against those entities. Under pressure from what we call, under pressure, then government decided and made an order and asked some of the entities to wind up their business. Now suppose entity A is one among those businesses whom was asked to wind up their business. Now because this entity is under some sort of pressure to wind up the business. यहाँ entity की मजबूरी है अपना business को बंद करने की. तो ऐसी situation में ऐसा हो सकता है कि इस entity के अगर net assets 1000 करोड़ के हों तो हो सकता है ये 700 रुपीस में ही अपना business बेच दे. Because this time there is a compulsion. There are some constraining factor. इस entity के ऊपर कुछ मजबूरी है, कुछ दबाव है, कुछ compulsion है. So under such situation, gain on bargain purchase could arise. Otherwise, gain on bargain purchase will never ever arise. तो मैंने लास्ट सेशन में ये बताया था जब कोई एंटिटी किसी दूसरी एंटिटी को टेक ओवर करेगी तो इंड AS 103 कुछ प्रिंसिपल्स प्रोवाइड करता है विद रिस्पेक्ट टू रिकग्नाइजेशन एंड मेजरमेंट ऑफ एसेट्स, जो एसेट्स हम लेंगे, एंड लायबिलिटीज. हमने देखा था कि जितने भी एसेट्स और लायबिलिटीज हम लेंगे उनको हम फेयर वैल्यू पे मेजर करेंगे रिकग्नाइज करने के बाद. लेकिन हमने इसके अंदर लास्ट सेशन में कुछ एक्सेप्शंस भी देखे थे. तुम्हें याद है ना एक्सेप्शंस? मैंने कहा था एक तो एक्सेप्शन है कंटिंजेंट लायबिलिटी का, कि कंटिंजेंट लायबिलिटी को हम रिकग्नाइज करेंगे या नहीं करेंगे. लास्ट सेशन में मैंने बताया था कि जनरल प्रिंसिपल ये है कि अगर मैं किसी का बिजनेस ले रहा हूं और उसकी कोई कंटिंजेंट लायबिलिटी है तो मैं उसको तभी रिकग्नाइज करूंगा अगर प्रोबेबिलिटी ऑफ आउटफ्लो ऑफ फंड्स हो. ये तो जनरल रूल है. लेकिन इंड AS 103 ये कहता है कि अगर मैं किसी का बिजनेस टेक ओवर कर रहा हूं, उसकी कोई कंटिंजेंट लायबिलिटी है और चाहे प्रोबेबिलिटी ऑफ आउटफ्लो ऑफ फंड्स हो या ना हो, हम उसको रिकग्नाइज करेंगे. वी आर गोइंग टू रिकग्नाइज इट. इज इट क्लियर टू यू और नॉट? ओके. तो एक तो ये तो था, मैंने लास्ट क्लास में मैंने बताया था कि दिस इज एन एक्सेप्शन टू रिकग्नाइजेशन प्रिंसिपल. उसके बाद हमने देखा था कि कुछ एक्सेप्शन होते हैं मेजरमेंट के भी और रिकग्नाइजेशन के भी, और उसके अलावा हमने देखा था कि कुछ एक्सेप्शंस होते हैं मेजरमेंट के भी. लास्ट सेशन में हमने इसके बारे में काफी चर्चा करी थी. उसके बाद जब कोई एंटिटी किसी दूसरी एंटिटी को टेक ओवर करती है तो एसेट्स को कैसे रिकग्नाइज और मेजर करना है ये हमने देखा था. उसके बाद स्टैंडर्ड कहता है कि जब आप किसी एंटिटी को टेक ओवर करेंगे, जब किसी एंटिटी का कंट्रोल हासिल करेंगे, तो आप गुडविल और NCI को भी कैसे रिकग्नाइज करेंगे और कैसे कैलकुलेट करेंगे, इसके बारे में भी कुछ प्रिंसिपल दिए गए हैं. तो आज हम इसकी थोड़ी अभी चर्चा करेंगे. करेक्ट, दिस इज द पॉइंट. मेजरमेंट ऑफ गुडविल और गेन ऑन बार्गेन परचेज. पहले मैं आपके सामने एक फॉर्मेट बना रहा हूं और फिर मैं आपको बताने की कोशिश करूंगा. इन ऑर्डर टू मेजर गुडविल और गेन ऑन बार्गेन परचेज, व्हाट आई एम गोइंग टू डू, फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, A, I am going to write 100% of net identifiable asset. Because मैंने वर्ड नेट यूज करा है, that mean assets minus liability. Is it clear to you? Net assets means assets minus liability. 100% of net identifiable assets. इसका क्या मतलब है? I will let you know in a short while. Then I am going to subtract from here B. Not share of non-controlling share of non-controlling interest holders share of non-controlling interest holders in NIFA. NIFA means net identifiable assets. Correct? Then I will subtract this figure from this one. Whatever this balance, we are not going to write anything. However, from this balance, I am going to subtract again less consideration. Now, if amount of consideration is more than this amount, the balance amount, then there would be goodwill. Otherwise, there will be gain on bargain purchase. GOBP means gain on bargain purchase. If amount of consideration would exceed this amount, then there would be goodwill. And if amount of consideration is less than this amount, then there would be gain, known as gain on bargain purchase. Now I will explain all these points in detail. You are going to get one question with respect to what we call calculation of goodwill NCI. This is the first section which we are going to do in this session, in this particular session. Correct? I have already told you in our notes we have got nearly 20 sections. Notes will be available on Telegram channel. Number 1. Link will be provided by way of comment. Correct? I will write a comment tomorrow at 11 a.m. I will give you the link. Then you can download the notes. Correct? Of business combination. So now the next point is, first of all, let me explain it. Correct? Presume there is an entity. Explanation. I haven't explained it yet. Presume there is an entity A, and this entity is a parent entity in the sense that it acquired 80% stakes in B Limited. A Limited acquired 80% stakes in B Limited. We further presume, when I say A Limited acquired 80% stakes in B Limited, what does it mean? That means we acquired 80% of the total share capital of B Limited. Let us say total share capital of B Limited is 1 crore. So 80% of that we acquired. Correct? But what amount we paid for that? That is known as consideration. In order to acquire 80% control in B Limited, let us say consideration. Consideration means the amount which is paid by the acquirer to the acquiree for acquiring the control. So consideration, let us say, is rupees 15 lakh. So entity A paid rupees 15 lakh to B Limited to acquire 80% of the share capital, or directly or indirectly to acquire control over this entity. Quite obviously, now B Limited is our subsidiary company, because most of the time in the questions you will be given only this particular line, and this particular line shows that on account of voting rights we have got the control. Now next point is, we further presume that control was acquired on 1st of December 2023. This is the date on which control was acquired. We made the investment on this particular date. We are investor. This is investee entity. On 1/12/2023, we made the investment, and this date on which investment is made and control comes to us is known as date of acquisition or date of control. It is known as date of control or date of acquisition. जिस दिन हमारे हाथों में कंट्रोल आएगा उसको हम डेट ऑफ कंट्रोल बोलेंगे. कंट्रोल हासिल करने के लिए मैंने कहा कि हमने 15 लाख रुपए दिए, यानी कि जितनी भी इनकी शेयर कैपिटल है उनके 80% शेयर हमने खरीदे, लेकिन 15 लाख रुपए दे करके खरीदे. यहां तक आई थिंक सबको क्लियर हो जाना चाहिए. अब हम ये मान लेते हैं कि जिस दिन हमने कंट्रोल हासिल करा उस दिन नीफा जब भी मैं वर्ड लिखूंगा इट मींस नेट आइडेंटिफाइबल एसेट. Net identifiable asset simply means assets minus liability of B Limited. NIFA means assets minus liability. We presume on 1/12/2023, net identifiable assets of B Limited is equal to rupees 10 lakh. And we further presume this is the fair value. Fair value of net assets of B Limited on the date of control or on the date of acquisition is rupees 10 lakh. Is it clear to you? This is the situation. Now suppose if I ask you to compute goodwill. First of all, you let me know because I have to revise the things. Who is the acquirer in this particular case? Who is the acquirer? Company A is the acquirer. Thank you. Who is acquiring? कौन एक्वायरी है जिसका बिजनेस लिया जा रहा है? B is acquiring. क्वेश्चन पढ़ के हमें नहीं पता लग रहा कि ये एक्वायरी का जो बिजनेस है वो बिजनेस की डेफिनेशन को पूरा कर रहा है या नहीं कर रहा, तो हम हमेशा मान करके चलेंगे क्योंकि क्वेश्चन विल ऑलवेज बी साइलेंट. करेक्ट. तो हम हमेशा ये मान करके चलेंगे the B Limited meets the definition of business. हम मान के चलेंगे कि B Limited जिस एंटिटी को हमने टेक ओवर करा है it meets the definition of business. तो इसलिए Ind AS 103 will apply. अब मुझे ये बताओ, जब A ने B Limited के 80% स्टेक्स खरीदे तो लीगल एक्वायरर कौन है? A Limited. The investor is always known as legal acquirer. A is legal acquirer and B is legal acquiree. लीगल एक्वायरर और लीगल एक्वायरी का मतलब है कि लॉ की नजरों में कौन एक्वायरर है. लॉ की नजरों में, इन द आईज ऑफ द लॉ, कंपनी A is the legal acquirer and company B is the legal acquiree in the eyes of the law. But we have to view the things in perspective of accounts. From the perspective of the accounts, in which company's books we are going to do the accounting. अगेन अब इस क्वेश्चन में और कुछ नहीं दिया. सपोज मैं आपको सिर्फ इतना ही दूं कि कंपनी A एक्वायर्स 80% कंट्रोल इन B. सो ऐसी सिचुएशन में, और याद रखें मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम्स यू आर गोइंग टू गेट सच क्वेश्चंस ओनली. करेक्ट. तो इसलिए कंपनी A विल ऑल्सो बिकम अकाउंटिंग एक्वायरर बिकॉज नथिंग एल्स इज गिवन इन द क्वेश्चन. नथिंग एल्स इज गिवन इन द क्वेश्चन. लेकिन सपोज मैं इसी क्वेश्चन में ये लिख दूं, A Limited acquired 80% control in B Limited. However, as per the agreement, B Limited will hold or B Limited will take control of the relevant activities. तो उस केस में क्या होता है? A लीगल एक्वायरर होगा, B Limited लीगल एक्वायरी होगा, लेकिन अकाउंटिंग इन द बुक्स ऑफ B Limited में होगी क्योंकि अकाउंटिंग एक्वायरर विल बी B. Such cases are known as reverse acquisition. We will talk about when we will take section 20. There are total all in all 18 or 19 or 20 sections in our notes. Correct? And we haven't started any section yet, to be very honest with you. तो ये मैंने थोड़ा सा याद दिलाने की कोशिश करी क्योंकि मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम हम लोगों को तो क्वेश्चन में सिर्फ इतना ही दिया होगा कि सो एंड सो कंपनी मेड सो मच ऑफ इन्वेस्टमेंट, सो 99.99% योर लीगल एक्वायरर विल बी द अकाउंटिंग एक्वायरर. So in the books of A, we have to do the accounting. So in the books of A, we will do the accounting. Books of A. Now, your first step is to identify the assets. Again, in this step, to be very honest with you, this particular step is only for theoretical sales. Correct? Because never ever in the question you will have to stretch your minds and imaginations to know actually which assets you have to recognize or which liabilities you have to recognize, because it will always be given in the question. Correct? For example, in this question you are given net identifiable assets of B Limited is equal to rupees 10 lakh. So you are going to recognize these assets. Of course, at fair value, their fair value is given. Net assets include assets minus liability. Then standard says that you have to compute goodwill, NCI, non-controlling interest, or gain on bargain purchase, isn't it? This is exactly what we saw in the last session. Now in this question, I'm interested in computing the goodwill. I just gave the format to you earlier. Now how to compute the goodwill? Let's see. In order to compute the goodwill, we are not going to follow any formula or something like that. Correct? Most of the time students become habitual of doing, as we call it in Hindi, ratification. ऐसा नहीं करना है. So we will compute the goodwill logically. Presume you are the acquirer entity. Correct? You are the acquirer entity. On the date of control, you ask yourself a question. What is the value of net assets? I will use the word now, net assets. What is the value of net assets of your acquiring company? Correct? You write 100% of that value. So that is, I will write, that is why I am going to write here 100% of net identifiable asset. We write net identifiable asset. Net identifiable asset mean all such items of assets and liabilities which can be separately what we call recognized. Net identifiable asset. Net means assets minus liability. We have already seen that on the date of control, net identifiable assets of B Limited having a fair value of rupees 10 lakh. So 100% value we are going to put up here. 100% value. Is it clear to you? So 100% of net identifiable asset means net identifiable assets are worth rupees 10 lakh, having a fair value of 10 lakh. So 100% of that we are going to put up here. Now, we have acquired 80% control in the other entity. Please try to understand this. Let me pick up first rough sheet. Suppose, just pay attention. Suppose there is an entity by the name of E2 and there is another entity E1. Let us say this entity acquires 70% stakes. 70% stakes in E2 Limited. When I say we acquire 70% stakes in E2 Limited, what does it mean? No doubt, it automatically means because we have acquired more than 50% of the stakes. So quite obviously now more than 50% of the voting rights are in the hands of E1 Limited. Needless to add that we are the parent now and this has become our subsidiary because we are exercising the control over it now. However, when I say I acquired 70% stakes in this company, what does it mean? See here. Let us say this company has got non-current asset worth rupees 100 and current asset worth rupees 100 and share capital worth rupees 200 and liabilities worth rupees 100 and reserves worth rupees 100. I will make it 300. So total is 400. Please try to understand actually the point which I am interested in putting up into your mind. ध्यान दें कि मैं कहना क्या चाहता हूं. मैंने कहा कि मैंने इस कंपनी में इन्वेस्ट करा और इस कंपनी में अब 70% कंट्रोल मेरे पास है क्योंकि इस कंपनी की जो भी शेयर कैपिटल है, इस कंपनी के अब जो भी शेयर कैपिटल है उसमें से 70% मेरे पास शेयर हैं और 30% इस कंपनी की जो शेयर कैपिटल है वो हमारे पास या E1 के पास नहीं है. मैं E1 लिमिटेड, आई हैव इन्वेस्टेड इन दिस एंटिटी. 70% of the total share capital is now in my hands, but 30% of share capital is not in my hand. Now please try to understand. Now you presume you are E2 limited. Your total share capital, let us say for simplicity's sake, your total share capital is 20,000 shares for simplicity's sake, correct? Of rupees 100 each. That means total number of shares of your company is 20,000. You are E2 Limited. Now, could you tell me, out of 20,000 shares, how many shares are in the hands of E1 now? Sir, 70% of 20,000. Very good. That means 14,000 shares are now being held by E1 Limited. That means your company is E2. Don't forget it. That means this E2 is having one of the shareholder as E1. Are you getting my point or not? You are E2 Limited. You have got total number of share 20,000. Out of that 14,000 is held by E1. That means now E1 is one of your shareholder. E1 is not only your shareholder but your parent company now, because it is having 70% share, so it can dictate the terms to you and it can control you. But try to understand this. You are E2 Limited. So E1 is one of your shareholder and this entity is having control over you because they are having more than 50% share. Now, all the other shareholders, that is 30%, all the other shareholders now will be called non-controlling interest holder. You got the meaning of non-controlling interest holder. Yesterday in the last session, I mean to say, when I made the question, what do you mean by non-controlling interest holder? Someone among you said that non-controlling interest holder basically means minority interest. Yes, you are right, because under AS 21, which also deals with consolidation, under the existing accounting standard, we call non-controlling interest holder as minority interest. But under Ind AS 3, we will call it non-controlling interest holder. In other words, if somebody now asks you, what do you mean by non-controlling interest holder? This is the investee company in which investment has been made. Investee company. This investee company or subsidiary company has two main shareholders. One is E1, who happens to be now parent company. This E1 Limited is a parent company of E2 simply because they are having 70% of your share capital. They are in driver's seat, they can control you. All the other shareholders of E2, all the other shareholders who will be equal to 30%, now will be known as non-controlling interest holder because they are interest holders, because they also have made the investment in your company. So they also have some interest, but problem is that they cannot control you. That is the reason actually they are known as non-controlling interest holder. That means they are interest holders, but they are not in a position to control you. You got the meaning of it or not? So next point is that whenever we make any investment in another entity, we acquire share in the net assets of that particular entity. For example, now come to this particular point. This entity has got 400 worth of net assets and liabilities worth rupees 100. So we can say their net asset is equal to 300. Their net asset is equal to 300. Now in this 300, no doubt your share means E1's share will be equal to 70%, while non-controlling interest holders share will be 30%. That means whatever assets are there, correct? Whatever assets are there on the date of investment, whatever net assets of subsidiary company or the investee company are there, out of those assets, you will have some share because you are in the driver's seat having 70%. So you will have 70% of this, and at the same time, other shareholders who are known as non-controlling interest holder. Why? I just told you, because they are also interest holder because of their investment, but they are not in a position to control. That is why they are known as non-controlling interest holders, and their share will be equal to 30%. Is it clear to you or not? So now, after having a look over the concept of non-controlling interest, now come to this point. 100% of net identifiable assets, first of all, you are going to write. Then from this particular figure, you subtract B. 1. Share of non-controlling interest. Share of non-controlling interest holders. NCI, non-controlling interest holder. net identifiable assets of the investee entity or the acquiring entity is 10 lakh. Now, out of this 10 lakh, because we have made 80% of investment, I told you in the beginning, where is the sheet, last sheet, where I have kept that particular sheet. Just wait. I haven't kept where I wrote, actually, I have forgotten it. Anyway, I think this is the sheet. I'm looking here at it. So I told you actually company A acquired 80%, correct? 80%. And net identifiable assets of A Limited are worth rupees 10 lakh. Out of that 10 lakh, 20% belongs to non-controlling interest holder because we have 80% share. So all the other shareholders of acquiring entity will be called as non-controlling interest. In order to compute goodwill, first of all, you need to understand when goodwill calculation of goodwill will be done. Calculation of goodwill or gain on bargain purchase will be done on the date of control. So on the date of control, net identifiable assets, first of all, you are going to write 10 lakh. Then you are going to find out of those assets, what proportion actually belongs to non-controlling interest holder. So we may say 2 lakh worth of net assets belong to non-controlling interest holder and balance, just for the sake of writing, I'm writing, this balance is known as share of acquirer in net assets, net identifiable assets of acquiring on the date of acquisition, on the date of control or date of acquisition. So on the date of acquisition, your acquiring company was having assets worth rupees 10 lakh. Out of that, 2 lakh belongs to other shareholders known as non-controlling shareholders, and 8 lakh now belongs to you. Is it clear to you or not? 8 lakhs belongs to you. Now, we are going to compare this figure with the consideration. Less. Consideration. Consideration means the amount which you are paying to the acquiring company for acquiring control, for acquiring some stakes in that particular company. We acquired 80% of the share capital, but we made a payment of rupees 15 lakhs. So this time my payment is very high. That means if amount of consideration will be more than what we are getting, actually now we can analyze it this way, that acquirer company paid 15 lakh on the date of acquisition, and on that date it acquired only 8 lakh worth of what we call assets, net assets. So that is the reason, because we have paid more and we acquired less, it will be termed as goodwill. We have to compute goodwill logically. Try to understand this point. We cannot what we call compute unnecessarily. I will give you much more. I will do lots of practice now, correct? Now I am going to start section 1 of my notes. Section 1. Now section 1 actually relates to calculation, relates to questions on calculation of goodwill, NCI, and gain on bargain purchase. Section 1. I have already told you this section relates to calculation of goodwill, non-controlling interest holders, and gain on bargain purchase. I will pick up question number 1. Now you might be wondering, sir, we are not having the notes. You need not require to worry about that. Even I know that you are not having the notes. Tomorrow at 11 a.m., just click the link which I am going to provide you, correct? By way of comment, or by in the description box I will write, and you will have the notes, but please check it only after 11 a.m. Okay. We presume there is an entity by the name of FX Limited. When I am writing 1.1, it means this is question number 1.1 of my notes. Because it is my book, my notes, and I have got 3 decades of teaching. So questions are memorized to me. You need not require to worry about that. You will never ever feel that you are not having the notes. Just pay attention here. There is an entity by the name of FX Limited. We further presume this entity acquired 100%. In fact, this question also is the first question of your module. FX Limited acquired 100% control in LX Limited. LX Limited. And in order to acquire 100% stakes in other entity, let us say amount paid or purchase consideration, in short form I will write purchase consideration, is rupees 9,60,000. Purchase consideration is rupees 9,60,000. Correct? We further presume LX Limited is having net assets of rupees 8 lakhs on the date on which control was acquired. Correct? Question is simply stating that FX Limited acquired on this date. We presume this is date of control. On this date, we acquired 100% stakes of LX Limited. We paid actually 9,60,000 rupees, and on this date, that means on the date of control, LX Limited, which is the acquiring company, has got net assets of rupees 8 lakh. Remember, if the question doesn't speak anything about net assets, always presume that this is the fair value of the net assets. Is it clear to you or not? Always presume it is the net assets. Now, in this question, who is acquirer? FX Limited. Who is acquiree? LX Limited. FX Limited is legal acquirer also, and it is the accounting acquirer also, because question has given only this much, that FX Limited acquired 100% of its stakes in LX Limited. So I have already told you, you need not require to worry about the fact to identify what we call accounting acquirer. Generally, the normal acquirer, that is legal acquirer, will always be your accounting acquirer. Now we have to compute the goodwill. In this case, now you let me know, if you have acquired all the shares of the other entity, then in this case, concept of non-controlling interest will come into play or not? Please give me the answer. You are given 3 or 4 seconds to answer it. If I have acquired complete control of this entity, all the shares are in my hands. So in this question, give me the answer. Would LX Limited have any non-controlling interest holder? Yes. I haven't got the answer still. Jyoti, Shubham, Sapan. Yes, I haven't still got the answer. I am telling that if I have got all the shares of this entity, yes, now I got the answer. No, because you are holding all the shares. However, please make it a point and make it a part of your habit. The format which I have given to you with respect to calculation of goodwill, always use it in the same manner, always in every question. What I want to say, for example, in order to compute the goodwill, first of all, I will write 100% of NIFA, net identifiable asset. This is the solution of LX Limited. LX Limited means the acquiring company. On the date of acquisition, it is always better to write this way around. DOA means date of acquisition or date of control. 100% of NIFA of LX Limited on the date of control is equal to 8 lakhs. This is how you are going to compute it, correct? Now, out of 8 lakhs, subtract less B, non-controlling interest holder. That's a different matter. In this case, there are no non-controlling interests, but you keep the format as it is. Correct? So quite obviously, whatever assets LX Limited is having, all these assets belong to us because we have got 100% control or 100% stakes in this particular entity. So I'm going to write share of, this balance amount will be termed as share of NIFA. In fact, write share of FX Limited in NIFA, net identifiable assets of LX Limited on the date of control or on the date of acquisition. So on the date of acquisition, whatever assets of LX Limited were there, those assets belongs to you. Now you are going to compare your share of assets with the amount which you have paid. C, consideration. How much consideration you have paid? Consideration, paid or payable, whatever it is. In this case, it is 9,60,000. So you are going to write here 9,60,000. By subtracting 9,60,000 from 8 lakh, you let me know this time answer is goodwill or capital or what we call gain on bargain purchase. Amount of consideration is more than share of acquirer in acquiree's assets. So quite obviously you have paid more than what you got. So that is the reason it is a goodwill. Goodwill is always a capital loss to the party, to the acquirer. 1,60,000. Is it clear to you? Now how to record it by way of entry? We can make an entry also, because question may ask us to pass the entry. Compute the amount of goodwill and pass the entry. This will be the requirement of the question. Now entry will be NIFA, net identifiable asset account debit, rupees 8 lakhs. You got 8 lakh worth of asset. Then you are going to write here 2, capital or cash. Why I am writing here 2, capital or cash? You can write consideration also, because the consideration will be paid by me either by way of capital. I can discharge the consideration by way of cash payment, by way of issue of shares, by way of debenture, etc. So when we say 2 capital or 2 cash, indirectly it means consideration. You can directly write consideration also. Since in the question it is not mentioned, this 9,60,000, what is the mode of payment? Correct? This mode of payment could be by way of shares, could be by way of what we call debentures, could be by way of bonds, could be by way of cash. So that is why I have written capital oblique cash, or you can simply write by 2 consideration. Your consideration is equal to how much? That is 9,60,000. If there would have been NCI, to NCI, you would have written NCI also with their share of assets. If there would have been NCI, then the difference of these two will be your goodwill, 1,60,000. So we can say that by paying 9,60,000, we are acquiring net identifiable asset worth rupees 8 lakh and 1,60,000 worth of goodwill. This is how we are going to pass the entry. This is section 1's, correct? We are at this particular moment doing, and now we'll pick up second question, question number 1.2. This question is again of your module. The names and dates might be changed. That's a different matter, because I cannot remember the name. So I will frame my names only. K9 Limited, let us say, is an entity. K9 Limited is an entity. And this entity again acquires 100% control in L5 Limited. Needless to add, it is the acquirer entity, and this is your acquiree entity. This is your acquiree entity. Correct? We further presume that in order to acquire 100%, where is the scale? In order to acquire 100% stakes, the consideration was, now it is agreed between acquirer and acquiree that we will acquire 100% stakes, but we will pay the consideration by way of 60,000 shares of rupees 240 each. That means acquirer is telling to the acquiring company that we are going to acquire your whole share capital, 100% of your share capital. However, we are going to make the payment by offering you 60,000 shares of rupees 200 for at the rate of 240 each, having a face value of 10. Having a face value of, this is face value of rupees 10 each. So in this question, mode of payment of consideration is given. So acquirer is paying 60,000 shares of rupees 240, having a at the rate of 240, in fact, having a face value of 10 to discharge the consideration. We further presume on the date of control, acquiree is having, on the date of control or date of acquisition, acquiree is having net assets having book value, this is book value of rupees 72 lakhs. On the date of acquisition, acquiring company is having net assets having a book value of rupees 72 lakh, but their fair value is determined at rupees 135 lakh. 135 lakh. Now this is the question. What is the question? K9 Limited acquired L5 Limited, acquired 100% shares in L5 Limited, and as per the agreement, acquirer will discharge purchase consideration by way of issue of 60,000 share at the rate of 240 each, having a face value of 10 each. Correct? Now in this question, you let me know what will be the amount of goodwill. You let me know now and try to compute. What should I write here? First of all, %, of NIFA, net identifiable asset of acquiree is L5, on the date of acquisition. On the date of acquisition, net assets of acquiree are 72 lakh, but remember we have to take the fair value, 100% of NIFA, but at fair value. So we will consider here the fair value 135 lakhs. 135 lakhs. We will consider the fair value. Now I will subtract from here less. Out of these net assets, now we will find out share of NCI. Now because in the question NCI is not possible because we have acquired 100% stakes, so whatever balance is there, all these assets belong to acquirer. Share of K9 or acquirer in net assets of acquiree on the date of acquisition, if you want to write. Indirectly, it means through your investment you got this much of value of what we call net assets. Now you are going to compare it with the consideration. C, consideration. Now consideration will be 60,000 shares you are going to issue at the rate of 240. Now that will be equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How much? 24 into 6, 144. So 144 lakhs. I think so. Please check it down also. Correct? So again, your amount of consideration is more than what you are getting, and I have already told you that most of the time we will have goodwill only. Most of the time we are going to have goodwill only. So 9 lakh will be your amount of goodwill. 9 lakh will be your amount of goodwill. 9 lakh will be your amount of goodwill. Correct? Now, could you tell me the exact entry? If any one of you will tell me the exact entry, then quite obviously I am going to reward him with something unexpected. First of all, I am going to write here net identifiable asset, account debit. In the books of acquirer, entire accounting is being done. So we are going to record all the assets and liability at fair values. So net value we have recorded. Then we are going to write here, this time we can straightway write consideration, but it is better to write it this way, to share capital. This time you are offering 60,000 shares of rupees 10 each. They are having a face value of 10. Don't skip it out of your memory. And you are offering share of rupees 10 each at the rate of 240. So that means securities premium. Security premium. Security premium will be 60,000 into 230. Now 60,000 into 230, how much it will be equal to? Here is the calculator. So 60,000 into 230 will be equal to, according to my calculation, 138 lakhs. 138 lakhs. Correct? You also keep on computing by yourself. In fact, this 1,44,000 is the total of purchase consideration. If there would have been NCI in this question, I would have written NCI share of net assets. Correct? Why we write here NCI share of asset? Because here we have written 100% value of net identifiable asset. Out of this, so much belongs to NCI. So whatever assets are left, that is being compared with what we call total purchase consideration. So again, balancing figure will be your goodwill. In fact, you have already computed goodwill. That's a different matter. Is it clear to you or not? Is it clear? Now suppose, now I come to next question. This is third question, and in fact this question is also third question of your module. Correct? Let us say there is an entity by the name of A Limited and there is another entity by the name of B Limited. This time entity A has stakes in B Limited to the extent of 80%. Correct? Consideration agreed, amount of consideration is rupees 9,60,000. We acquired 80% stakes in B Limited, and of course we agreed to pay them 9,60,000. We presume on the date of acquisition, net assets having fair value rupees 8 lakhs are with B Limited. That means on the date of acquisition, fair value of net assets of B Limited is 8 lakhs. Correct? You have acquired 80% stakes in B Limited. Suppose if I ask you to compute the goodwill, of course you can do it within a flick of second. Okay, first you let me know the amount of goodwill. Now, through this question, I will tell you that sometime question may tell you to compute NCI at fair value. Sometime question may say. But At this particular moment, we presume question is saying nothing. Question is simply asking us to compute the value of goodwill. Now, goodwill can be computed in the manner as we have adopted so far. For example, A, 100% of NIFA. I'm simply writing 100% of NIFA. I'm not writing 100% of NIFA or P limited on the date of acquisition because it will unnecessarily consume the time. Correct? But you make a habit of writing the full thing. 100% of fair value of net identifiable assets of acquiry on the date of acquisition, it means. That is actually 8 lakhs. From there on, you subtract NCI. When I write here NCI, it means I'm subtracting the share of NCI. Because we are holding 80% stakes, 20% will be non-controlling interest holders. So 20% of 8 lakh shall amount to 1,60,000. So out of 8 lakh, I may say 1,60,000 worth of asset belong to NCI. Simple. So 6,40,000, correct? 6,40,000. This balance amount is nothing but share of acquirer in net assets. And we have made a payment of 9,60,000. We paid consideration of 9,60,000, but we got worth 6,40,000. So quite obviously my payment is high in comparison to the assets which I am acquiring. So the difference will be 3,20,000. This 3,20,000 will be known as goodwill. Now please pay attention. Generally, it is the complete discretion. Discretion means choice, option. ये complete discretion है एक्वायरर का कि वो चाहे तो एनसीआई को, देखो यहां पर जब मैंने एनसीआई को वैल्यू करा ना, एनसीआई का शेयर कितना लिया मैंने 20%, और उसको मैंने मल्टीप्लाई किससे कर दिया, जो भी नेट एसेट्स हैं बी लिमिटेड के या एक्वायरी के। जब हम इस तरीके से एनसीआई कंप्यूट करते हैं तो हम बोलते हैं एनसीआई नॉन कंट्रोलिंग इंटरेस्ट हैव बीन कंप्यूटेड थ्रू proportionate method. Proportionate method, when we say proportionate method, it means in proportion to net assets of acquiring company. Actually लास्ट सेशन में भी मैंने लिखाया भी था, नोट भी लिखाया था, तुम्हें याद होगा कि Ind AS 103 gives an option to the entity to compute NCI either at fair value or on the basis of proportionate method. And I also told at that time that I am going to explain this point later on. So you must understand that NCI can be measured, non-controlling interest holder, can be measured at fair value. This is the option with the acquirer, correct? It is not a force, it is the option, choice. NCI can be measured on fair value basis, or on proportionate basis. When I say proportionate basis, it means in proportion to net assets, on proportionate basis. And in all the questions which we have done so far, we computed NCI on proportionate basis, because what we did, we were simply taking the percentage of the NCI and multiplying it with the value of net identifiable assets of acquiring company. So when NCI is computed by taking the percentage against the net identifiable asset, we call that NCI is being measured on proportionate basis. And remember, this is a choice. NDS gives a right to the acquirer whether they want to value NCI or measure NCI at fair value or proportionate basis. 99.99% question will never ever tell you. So it is your choice. Indirectly it means, because you have to do the accounting in the books of the acquirer. So 99.99% we will adopt this approach only to compute what we call NCI on proportionate basis. But suppose in this question, suppose this question says that A Limited decides, suppose A Limited acquirer, A Limited decides to value or to measure NCI at fair value. Suppose if question would have stated this way round, in that case you cannot have any option. So you will have to value the what we call NCI on fair value basis. Now see here. Suppose if question says that acquirer decides to measure NCI at fair value, you need to know the art of computing the value of NCI this way round. In this case, how I am going to compute? First of all, I am going to write for 80%, I am acquiring 80% share capital of other entity. In order to acquire 80% shares of other entity for 80%, consideration payable, how much consideration I am paying? Because I am acquiring only 80% of the share, I am paying 9,60,000. Correct? Suppose if I had acquired 100% shares, then how much I would have paid? For 80% consideration is 9,60,000. For 100% it would have been 9,60,000 into 100 divided by 80. It would be equal to 1, 2. So 12 lakh. Right. 12 lakh. See, actually, first you must understand this point. There is no point in doing the question unless you are not going to understand the real logic. I am acquiring this entity. This entity is having some share capital. And I am acquiring 80% of the share capital. I am paying 9,60,000. Now I am telling you that if I had acquired entire 100% share capital, how much amount I would have paid? In that case, I would have paid 12 lakh. Actually, it means the value, it is nothing but, this is nothing but the fair value of share capital. Their share capital might be worth rupees or book, might be having a book value of 10 lakh. Correct? The other entities, we may say, if other entity would have sold 100% of its shares to us, then other entity would have charged what we call, let us say 12 lakh. So for 80% we are paying 9,60,000. If we had acquired all 100% share, in that case the amount of purchase consideration would have been rupees 12 lakh. So we can say 100% share capital of other entity, acquiring entity, is having a fair value of rupees 12 lakh. If 100% share capital of other entity is having a fair value of 12 lakh, you have acquired 80% share, and that is why you have paid 80% of this 9,60,000. So quite obviously value of 20% share, and 20% are nothing but non-controlling interest holder. So their value must be equal to 2,40,000. So that is how we are going to compute the fair value. So whenever question would ask you to compute the NCI at fair value, first of all you compute the fair value of the 100% fair value of your consideration, because you are paying 9,60,000 for 80%. For 100% you would have paid what we call 12 lakh. So this 12 lakh means this is the fair value of 100% share capital of acquiring company. Therefore, value of 20% 20% into rupees 12 lakh. That will be equal to 2,40,000. So we can say fair value of NCI is equal to rupees 2,40,000. Now because NCI is being measured at fair value, this time valuation of goodwill when I will do, we will not get the same answer. For example, if I am going to compute the goodwill now, that means now I am computing goodwill by measuring NCI at fair value. So I will first of all write 100% of NIFA. 100% of NIFA is equal to 8 lakh. No doubt about that. 100% of NIFA is equal to this. Then I am going to subtract NCI. But because I am not measuring NCI on proportionate basis, so I am not going to write here 20% of 8 lakh. I am going to write here fair value. So fair value of NCI is 2,40,000. So that means out of 8 lakh worth of asset, 2,40,000 belongs to non-controlling interest holder. You are left up with 5,60,000. This will be your share. Share of acquirer. Share of acquirer. Share of acquirer. Of course, now you are going to compare it with the amount of consideration. Amount of consideration is how much? Amount of consideration is 9,60,000. So that means 4 lakh is the worth of goodwill. This is goodwill. Quite obviously, it means if the question states that compute the goodwill when NCI is measured on fair value basis and when NCI is measured at proportionate basis, this is how you will have to solve the question number 1. However, just solving the question is not our intention. Our intention is also to orient you with the most deepest possible understanding. Unfortunately, I am finding very less comments. If there will be less than 25 comments this time, not on live chats, I think I will have to stop these live classes. Correct? But anyway, see here, when I computed goodwill, okay, first let me see. When NCI was measured on proportionate basis, correct, the amount of goodwill which we computed was 3,20,000. Correct? Amount of goodwill is 3,20,000. 3,20,000. This is what we did. The amount of goodwill which is computed is ultimately shown in consolidated financial statement. Consolidated financial statement means parent company, acquirer company plus its subsidiary company, acquiring companies, combined balance sheet. In the consolidated balance sheet, we will write goodwill 3,20,000. Correct? When NCI was measured on proportionate method basis. Now, when NCI is measured on fair value basis, in that case, in the consolidated financial statement, goodwill will be reflected at 4 lakh. But here you need to understand one important point and you need not require to let it skip out of your memory. See here, when NCI, this question is asked so many times in the interview, please pay attention. When NCI is measured at fair value, in that case, the goodwill which is represented in the consolidated financial statement shows that this is combined goodwill of parent and of course NCI. If I will compute 80% of this, it will be 3,20,000. Are you getting my point or not? You can see that means if NCI is measured at fair value, in that case, the goodwill which we get shows it is the combined goodwill of both parent and NCI. However, when NCI is measured on proportionate basis, in that case, the figure of goodwill reflects only the share of acquirer. This is the point I just wanted to hammer into your mind. So on such note, we have finished up this section and we will take up 3-4 more questions. Total questions I have kept 11 in this particular section. Correct? We will continue with this section, and of course, then we will start with common control. Correct? So whenever the next session I am going to hold, because right now these are the initial stages and lots of live classes I have announced. So your next class will be, please note it down, your next class will be on Monday 8:30. On Monday 8:30, and after that your timings will be Monday, Wednesday and Friday 8:30. But I have increased the duration. Correct? This is how we are going to move. Next session will be on Monday at 8:30. Each one of you must write a comment on the comment boxes, not on the live chat. That's what I really want to know, whether you are able to understand each and every aspect. What sort of teaching you are expecting from us? Is it coming up to your expectations or not? And what else you would like to have from us? So on such account, we end up this particular session. Hope as always that it must have come up to your expectations, and really sorry that in the initial stages I forgot to have the mic. So on such note, we take leave of you now. Time to say good night and God bless you.